Welcome to Top Bracket Podcast, where top performers share the strategies behind real success.
Welcome back to the Top Bracket Podcast, where we host conversations with high performers who refuse to stay average. I'm your host, mr.FourAM, and on this show, we go beyond titles and polished bios to uncover the real thinking and experiences and decisions that shape exceptional careers. Today's conversation takes us into the topic that every leader talks about, but not every leader truly understands. And that's psychological safety in the workplace, and not from a surface level HR perspective. We're going to explore through the lens of a mental health and clinical leadership expert and what it actually takes to build environments where we can perform without pretending. My guest today is Joshua Paulos, president of Elegant Leadership, Inc., where he provides consulting, training, and clinical supervision services. Joshua brings more than 24 years of service in the mental health field, including over 100,000 hours of community service across direct patient care, group sessions, and individual sessions, training, supervision, staff development, and leadership. He has served in demanding roles that require integrity, clarity, and steadiness. More importantly, a deep human understanding. His background includes leading teams, managing multi-million-dollar program budgets, supporting in compliance with state and county mental health regulators, and working across diverse multicultural service environments. What makes this conversation exceptionally valuable is that Joshua sits at the intersection of mental health, leadership, and organizational culture. So today, we're not just asking what psychological safety is. We're asking about what it looks like when the stakes are real, when people are under pressure, and when leadership has to be more than just a title. Joshua, welcome to Top Bracket.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you, man. So Joshua, I always like to start at the foundation, because when someone spends more than 2 decades in the mental health services, their perspective usually comes from more than just textbooks of theory. It comes from lived experiences, repeated exposure to human complexity, and choosing to stay committed when the work is not easy. When you look back across your 24-year plus career in mental health and community service, what experiences most shape the way you think about people, leadership, and healing today?
Yeah, I really appreciate the way you framed that question. So it's kind of like mental health, healing, and leadership and safety. I feel like all those things, I know that all those things are combined. And when I say feeling, I don't mean just talking about emotion. I mean a feeling of a sense of a duty. And I think, what really impacts me, of course, there's a lot of stories over the years from when I first started out till now. And of course, we're always learning, is really at the core of my experiences has been a calling from what I call a creator. So that for me has been the grounding anchor or essence of everything that I've done and why I didn't quit about the first 5 or 7 years. Kind of thing to do, actually. So the theme of having a spiritual purpose and a spiritual power to support you and sustain you through times when things are difficult for both you and the people. So you have the different layers, right? So we have the layers, kind of to some of your points at the intersection earlier, is we have the layers of the kind of levels of care. We have the layers of like clinical diagnosis. We have the layer of what kind of program they're in. And then we have the different roles. So we have staff, patients, clients, and then what we're talking about. So I think when we talk about what sustains that in a healing way, I believe that it comes from a creator.
It's beautifully said, man. Was there a particular season, role, or moment earlier in your career that made you realize this work would require more than just a clinical skill?
Yeah, like first month. Well, yeah, exactly, right. So let's talk about clinical skill, right? So thank you. So for clinical skill, right, you need to have education, you need to have context, you need to have knowledge. So you need to have, I kind of think of clinical with critical, right? Critical thinking and clinical thinking go hand in hand. So like for my craft, right, it's like the DSM, right? The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And so no matter if you're like a medicine doctor, a psychiatrist, a nurse practitioner, a mental therapist, clinician, or even if you're like a supporter, they still can see and access a person's chart, which does show their DSM diagnosis, for example, like major depression or whatever the things are. And so when we talk about clinical, we go a little more into critical thinking. And I think one of the things that I saw was difficult was the diagnostic differential. So what are we really looking at? So I think that's been difficult. But I think even more difficult than that, and simple at the same time, from my experience, is that it's a human work. It's a work of the heart. Dare I say, the language of the soul when people suffer. So it all comes down to suffering, really. I mean, you can create a book like this. You can create a whole encyclopedia of books. These are a shared language about clinically and think critically about people suffering.
Wow, that's pretty deep, man. So a lot of people enter service-oriented fields with really good intentions, but staying in the work for decades requires something deeper than just motivation. It requires endurance, conviction, and a clear understanding of why the work really matters, which it sounds like you've gone beyond the studies to get to the soul of it. What originally drew you into social work and community mental health, and what's kept you committed to the field for more than 2 decades?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And again, I believe in a creator, right? Like it's kind of cool because I always say this, right? So I'm not a religious person. I'm a kingdom person. And so I say that because like you have like Miles Monroe and Dr. Miles Monroe, and you have I forgot his name. I could see I could see his face right now. Anyway, so you have people that we talk about these things, right? And it's more like a way of living that dedicates your life to your purpose within a creator mindset, right? An organized mindset that we all have a purpose, sort of like the trees have a purpose, the soil has a purpose, the air has a purpose, the clouds have a purpose, the sun with the vitamin D and all the, what's like that photosynthesis, right? They're all the components that build plants. I think it's the same thing with us. And so that is what has sustained me and helped me stay more on a human level, more on a, like quote unquote organic level, but still
Mhm.
be able to think critically and clinically, but that's not really my priority. So I train people, I train students, I train staff all the time on this stuff. And the way I describe it to them, because they get lost and, they write a bunch of papers, right? So like I took 108 classes in my college career, and
Jesus.
I may do a little bit more to do like a doctorate in education. And so I'm thinking of doing that because one day I want to work like more globally and be able to go other places. And a lot of times people know what a therapist is and stuff, but they kind of like, I don't know, a therapist educating them on communication. Yeah, it makes sense. But somebody that has a doctorate in education, I think it has some credibility that, I mean, I don't want to, I know I'm being recorded and anything, but I mean, I don't think I'm saying anything anybody doesn't feel sometimes anyway. So anyway,
And we're in a safe place.
so, so through all that, right? It's like where is the humanness of it? And I think that comes from understanding that, yes, as far as the species goes, I'm at the top of the food chain. In the universe, I don't think so.
That's an interesting way to phrase that.
Right.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you feel like you're on a divine mission in a sense, is what I'm gathering.
True. And so, um, in the next few years, what I want to do is I want to write a book, and I want to I also, but my goal is really to share my story, my testimony, if you will, with my
Mhm.
daughter first. So it'll be a book to her about my life so that she understands me. And when I'm passed away, that, my great grandkids and their grandkids will know who their lineage, so to speak, right? In a spiritual way and also in a physical way, because I think they definitely go hand in hand. So yes, right. Me of the divine, but not divine.
That makes sense. Okay. What did your reason for doing the work change as you moved from direct service into leadership and supervision?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it changed. I think there was a time where I knew like all the stuff I was doing. I was like, well, I think I'm going to start helping helpers. And I still do individual work and group work and stuff like that, but it is starting to shift. And I think it's definitely a choice because it's not like making more of an impact is sort of a little bit subjective because like the impact on one person can be just as great and I feel is just as great and impactful as impactful of 1,000 people, right? So
Yeah.
and it's like if you want to impact more people in general, then the 1,000 is, on the outside it looks like more impactful. It's just sometimes the work with people individually or in a smaller group can be deeper. So you get that ebb and flow of both those things. For me, it hasn't changed. I think I always knew, like, even when I started out, I mean, my first couple of years starting out, I worked at this small clinic and I was already training people how to run the office and how to do groups and what meanwhile I was learning. I was learning how to work with young people, that weren't interested in boring older people stuff. So not only am I sharing information, I'm learning a lot too.
That makes a lot of sense, man. Bio speaks of integrity, intention, and honoring kingdom-based values, which we've kind of touched on so far. That
Yeah.
tells me that your leadership is not just technical. It also is deeply tied to your personal standards and spiritual conviction. How have your values shaped the way you lead, you serve, you supervise, and the decisions you make in very difficult environments, especially when it comes to someone not being, I don't want to use a taboo phrase, but off the rocker in a sense, you know what I mean? Like, how do
Yeah.
you, somebody that's not in the mental state to calm
Yeah.
them down, they can make a decision that's good for them.
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, I feel like, well, I don't even feel like it. There's a confidence that I have that I am loved, that I am deeply loved, despite my own mistakes in my life, despite, many of the things I don't know. But the things that I do know that maybe I'm not proud of or things I could have done better,
Mm,
I still know that I'm deeply loved by the creator. And that's a special, special thing. And I think that that's one of the main values is to express that and demonstrate that. So sometimes it's in what I don't say. So if somebody is stressed out, I don't go, hey, you need to calm down and let's just calm down right now. Maybe part of what I say is, yeah, that really sucks.
so you meet them where they're at.
Right. Right. And maybe lean into like supporting them through that process versus trying to shift it too early. And like, so again, we come back to the layers, right? So we come back to the layers, right? So we have the levels of care, the diagnostic stuff, we have the different kinds of staff, and then we have the programs. And so the truth is, if we get too much into the weeds on that, then we start to lose the essence of the people. And the essence of the people, to your point in the beginning, I love how you said that. You said about the healing, because really, this is psychological suffering. And the healing is in being seen and heard. That doesn't mean you're co-signed though, right? So if you're doing things like, you're drunk every weekend and you're making a mess of your life, we're going to say something to you about that. We're going to have some exercise, some tools for that. If you're super anxious or depressed or whatever it is, or you get manic or whatever it is, then, we're going to try to help you stabilize that. Because it's still not okay. That's not an excuse to treat people badly. Bad
No,
behavior is bad behavior, right? But we're going to try to help you see that and name that for yourself more, and then give you some more tools, offer you some more tools, invite you. It's an invitation similar to what happened with me. It continues to happen to me. I'm invited into this relationship with the creator, and it becomes self-will, and it becomes beautiful versus, oh, I got to do this thing because so-and-so told me to. And because I need this and I need that and I can't do this and I can't do that. It's like, well, an invitation, you can either accept it or you can't, or you don't.
that's a good way to think about it. Can you think of a time where your values helped you navigate a situation that where the easiest decision and the right decision were not the same?
Right. The easiest decision and the right decision were not the same.
Mm,
I'll be honest with you. I'm going to be honest with you about this one. I like that you said that, because me as a person that supervises teams and people working on their license, there
mhm.
have been times, and more than one time, and it happens where, I don't feel okay with like signing off on this person's hours or proceeding with the person because there's some red flags there. And so we got to talk about the red flags before we proceed. So I think it comes up more often than I would like, where people aren't really following patient care. They're not doing anything wrong per se, but they're also like they're not really open anymore to what the patients are going through. They kind of just show up for their sessions and you sign their hours and everything's okay and this and that. And it's like, yeah, but it's like if you're an ER doctor and nobody's coming to the ER, you're
Yeah,
not really an ER doctor then. Right? Like you know what I mean? Like, and then and then your supervisor is saying, hey, what happened with that patient that, this and that, it was a pretty serious case. Go, hey, everything was fine. Like, well,
everything's not fine.
exactly. Exactly. So we need to do a little breakdown of like how you dealt with that emergency situation. But it's not always such an emergency in therapy but you don't know what you don't know, and the patients don't know what they don't know. So there's layers. There is a, I call it a simple sophistication. So you so so over the years, I had 2, 3, 4 mentors. I had about 8 to 10 supervisors, and every one of them, I listened to everything they said. I told them 1000% truth about what I was dealing with. That's why I know that when you work with people that are not stable, something's
Yeah.
going to come for you.
Wow.
And that's the stuff we need to talk about in supervision. And I think I don't tell people that at group level because that's like, like singling someone out, putting them on blast and all those things people say, but it is appropriate in one-on-one supervisions. And the hope would be in a group, they would feel more comfortable doing it too. But that's not always guaranteed. I mean, we have this weird society right now where people share their lives on these phones, but it's
Yeah.
so superficial. It's not much deeper than a like, because I like how you look or I like where you've been and your food looks good and whatever. But this is different. Like I had this saying that I used to say when I used to do nonviolence groups, and I did that for like 13 years, and they were all court mandated people that had been convicted of domestic violence, frankly, right? And
Yeah.
so, and by the way, the recidivism rate out of that organization that I was at was probably like not even 1%. Like I've seen a few people out of all those years come back like twice, like not even a handful, like 3 or maybe 4. Play it too far, but so people can get it. They do get it. And so anyway, I used to have this saying because we like to connect on the things that we relate to when we find
Right.
similar, but it's hard for us to connect with people we disagree with. So I came up with this phrase that is really hard for me to remember because I don't even think like this all the time, but I think it's, and it goes like this: to acknowledge the similarities and respect the differences. Acknowledge the similarities and respect the differences. And I think as when you're doing therapy with people, you got to do the same thing. You got to acknowledge how you feel like you identify with people, but like acknowledge that sometimes that like they're very different than you. Their suffering and their healing can be very different from you. And it's our job to walk that through with them side
You
by
know what
side.
that reminds me of? There's a trend online on
Mm,
TikTok and Instagram
yeah.
of couples and friends, I guess, getting together and sitting down at a table and saying, "We listen and we do not judge." And then they say something that obviously you're judging them in your head, but now I can't say anything about it because
You just
you did what?
So those are difficult. Those are difficult because it's very simple. It's just not easy
No, it
because
doesn't sound like it, man. It brings me to another. Draws another question out of me,
yeah.
especially with the years you've been on this and your reason why you're doing this. Many leaders are shaped by the roles that they chase. Others are shaped by the roles that they accept when the work is difficult and few people want to step in. Your background suggests that you've often taken demanding responsibilities that required steadiness under pressure. You weren't chasing roles. You were chasing, what were you chasing? Or were you chasing anything?
Well, I like this. See, again, we come back full circle. I love your questions because I answered it earlier. I'm responding to the invitation. So when I go
Gotcha.
to places, right, I remember I was on the board. I was on this board of this place, right? And I was on the board, and then there was some changes, and I became the president. And then I had a vice president. The vice president worked at Salesforce,
Yeah.
and and we were talking about projects we did. I did this pretty big project at Santa Rita. It's like the third largest jail in the country or in California. It's the third largest somewhere. It's pretty big. That's pretty big. Not the biggest, but that's pretty big.
Yeah.
And
That's
and
huge.
he asked me this question. He said, "Is that the biggest thing?" He was like, "Is that the biggest thing you ever done?" And I thought, honestly, no, I don't know what the biggest thing I've ever done. I know that the biggest decision I ever made was to respond to the invitation from the creator.
Hmm. Okay. Well, let me ask you. That's interesting. As you worked at a,
Uh-huh.
what
Uh-huh.
was the most demanding roles in your career, and what have they taught you about responsibility, say emotional resilience, and the weight of
Ooh.
leadership? Because that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, yeah. I remember this job where I was in leadership for a residential treatment program. It's 24/7. It was dual diagnosis. I had multiple responsibilities and it was at a nonprofit. So, right, like we did everything, right? We did half the technology setup. I trained the next person. It wasn't necessarily like a scripted manual to step into a role for me. into somebody else to step into my role. So I'm holding both things. I'm being trained at this other layer of responsibility, which is increasing. And it's only like 20 grand more a year. And that's not a lot of money. All those,
No, not in the Bay Area.
no. And then I'm also training the person that took my spot. But again, it's all, there's belief in me, there's belief in the other person, and then there's belief in the people we're serving.
Let's see.
So what I learned about myself is that, I learned that like you gotta learn to accept. Like for me, I learned to accept that it's not gonna go exactly the way you want it to, but you can still be present for people. So I'll give you an example. Like,
Okay.
so I remember when I did admissions at this place, right? So the first thing I did is I reorganized the whole space. So there was a flow for the job. It wasn't just me doing the job. It was me setting it up for the next people that come and do the job. So there is a flow, not just like this is what you do and you're like stepping over your own back, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so there's and then there is the job, right? Just doing the job and then setting up the flow for the job at the same time, learning the job, setting up the flow for the job, and then setting it up for the next. Because I know that like a lot of these roles, like again, it set me up for consulting because I already know that like I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna adjust some stuff, I'm gonna look at some workflows and make some recommendations. I might even be part of it. I might roll it out, give you the feedback, all the stuff. But I know all the stuff because I done it.
Yeah.
I didn't have somebody teach me one little job. I taught somebody else how to do it and I learned another job, right? So I remember this one time to the point of like being in touch with the people. I went on vacation and I was only on vacation and I mean a vacation because I work a lot. It was only like 3 days. It's like, I don't know. I came in on weekend, did something, but then I took Sunday, Monday, Tuesday off. I came back Wednesday. There were 40 calls on the phone. The light was blinking. 40 calls, just like that. I'm like,
what is this?
like, and then the phone, and I think it was ringing also. Like it was ringing when I looked at it. I was like, oh, the
Something
system.
going on.
I had got the program full to capacity.
Mhm.
And guess what?
What's up?
40 calls, 2, 3 coming in, probably 5 more coming in. It'd be like 50 by the end of the day. There's only one spot though. There was only one spot. So what I do is I went up and I went to the morning meeting with the community. We call it the community with the clients and the staff.
Mhm.
I went up there and I said, hey, the phone ringing off the hook. People want to get up in here. There's only one spot. I'm here to check in with y'all. What's happening? They said, oh, all right. Like, I'm trying to check the vibe of the community right now. We got one spot. Y'all ready? And see, everybody laughs. And then when they saw somebody come in, they were ready for the person.
So what did you do did you fix that capacity issue?
Well, what I did is, I studied the work. It was a workflow issue.
Okay.
It was some choice points along the way. And, Slee, I'm a very efficient worker. Like I will find ways. So for example, like, let's give you an example. Like, say we have a Kaiser referral, for example, right? Kaiser does 2 or 3 months at a time tops. We had somebody that came in from Kaiser, but that's guaranteed. They don't, they'll probably stay there, right? So the person could come back. They needed to come back. I think they had some forensic requirements, like they had to report to court or something by a certain time. And so if they didn't come back to art, they had been there one time already for 2-3 months. They wanted to come back. And Kaiser was going to let them come back to us or sign them up somewhere else because they had a forensic deadline.
Gotcha.
So it all came down to like, they wanted to come in on Saturday. And I technically my work isn't on Saturday. I could be like,
Hey.
too bad. Sorry, you may have to go somewhere else. I came in on Saturday for 4 hours. They were there for 60 days. This is how my mind thinks. That's better for everybody. We got raises for the staff. I got promoted. In fact, my partner there, she told me that I kept that program full the longest than anybody she's ever known. And she was there like 10 years. And I didn't even do the role. I did the role maybe 8 months, 9 months, something like that. I get kind of bored with stuff too. Once I get it going, I'm like, I'm ready to give it to somebody else.
All right, the platform is built. Who wants it?
Yeah. Who wants to fly this plane? This one's
So was there ever a point where the responsibility felt heavy enough, or how do I want to phrase this? Was there ever a point where the responsibility felt heavy enough that you had to grow into a new version of yourself to carry it well? It sounds like this may have been that moment.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think there's an evolution to this, right? When you're really committed to this work and you're really like humble about this work, you're always each person you see, it's going to change you for the better. So like, for example, I was doing trauma work with people and, they have a lot of, it's like adjustment disability work. I mean, serious stuff or just their own trauma. It's all kinds of things, right? Like, it's easy to kind of connect to people and validate their pain and this and that. But the funny thing about that is like, I remember working with people in that and I started getting this weird, like, I got this thing in my eye that wouldn't go away for 5 hours and I couldn't even think straight. I had to close my eye and meet with them or I'd be on the phone with them. And I'm just like, what is happening? And it's like, what's happening is in my mind is the creator showing me that this is the pain that these people are in. They're suffering like this all day, every day. And you need to know that. You need to understand that better.
Mm.
And same thing with and the same thing with staff, right? Like when we have staff, like some of them come into the work and they want to help people, but they want to work harder than the patients. And it's like a coach trying to train for you. Like that's not how that works.
Nah.
A coach doesn't come in and say, hey, you want to work on your legs? I'm going to do my legs. When I do my legs, look good now. Like, no, it don't work like that, does it?
Yeah.
But for
I'm here
this
to push
field,
you.
yeah, right. Because people might feel better. They might feel encouraged. But again, we call people to task. And I really believe in the parallel process. But I think that one role, I think all of these roles have challenged me. I think some of the roles that I'll tell you one thing I think that's really important maybe to know is that, or to share, is that the forensic world is a very challenging world to be in because you got to have like a directness to you. You got to have
Yeah.
like a way to where they got to know that they can't manipulate you, but then they also are suffering, aren't they? They're also suffering.
Wow. So Josh, that gives us rather, a very strong picture of the person behind the professional title. You've been through a lot in the last 23 years, 24 years. Now, I want to move from your
Mhm.
journey into your expertise because psychological safety has become a popular phrase in leadership circles. But your background gives you a much deeper lens into what it actually means when people are under that type of real pressure. I've learned a lot recently about psychological safety, often talked about in corporate language because now it's a buzzword. But in the real world, in your world, safety is not just a buzzword. It's tied to trust, tied to communication, tied to emotional regulation, whether people feel safe enough to tell you the truth, like you said. What does that actually mean to you?
Well, I'm just going to keep it real with you. So it's a goal. And, you know, some of the things that are already there are kind of there as like studies and approaches and all of the things.
Mhm.
So psychology is the mind and the heart, right? The integration of the mind and the heart. And then therapy, right? Or even therapy approaches, right? No matter
Mhm.
CBT, DBT, solution focus, internal family systems, all of the stuff. It's the either or into the both and. So
The
it's a
either or,
living, breathing thing.
and it's like a decision
Either
tree.
or. Well, it's integration.
Okay.
It's integration. So, for example, there's some responsibility on the work culture, the leadership of the culture, and then there's responsibility on the people, the team. It's a shared accountability and responsibility. And so the integration is I'm thinking this, I'm feeling this, feel safe. And how might I feel safe? So these are the kind of questions I ask people. Or I ask people things like, well, what are your values? How do you demonstrate your values in this work? Your clinical values, because it's not just scientific critical thinking. What's the difference between judging and assessing? So the same thing,
That is a
right?
good
So
question. I never thought about
I
it.
think,
Yeah.
well, yeah, I mean, and I think this has to do with boundaries, right? So like, I mean, just to be real, right? Like my my leadership team is not fully responsible for me feeling safe, are they? Like I need to let them know, like, hey, that didn't seem like balanced. I don't use the word fair, by the way. That's a very charged word.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem balanced. It doesn't seem like, like
I
I'm not
like
sure.
balance more than fair. It puts
Right.
it in
Like,
perspective. It takes it out of the abstract.
right. And start to like maybe offer potential solutions,
Mhm.
collaborate, these kind of things. I think it's, I think it's just saying that people aren't going to feel safe and we want you to feel safe. What does that look like for you? So, but I do use three things. I do use three things when I work with this team and I do. It's pretty much the same thing with patients and all that stuff, but especially with staff, right? So the three things I use is calm, kind, and consistent.
Calm, kind, and consistent.
And then with staff, what I like to do when training them is I say this, I say we as far as everybody, and it's
Hmm.
sort of an assumption, right? We want you to be consistent, confident, and comfortable. You can't be comfortable without being confident, and you can't be confident without being consistent.
The three C's.
Yes, sir. And it also applies to the same thing about your own self-care. And I don't mean that as a buzzword. I mean it like literally caring for yourself, like eating what you're thinking. Like, we could go on the psychology stuff, right? Because there's two kind of messaging, right? There's external messaging and then there's internal messaging. So what I like to help people with is like, it's like a smorgasbord. To quote one of my mentors, he passed away now, his name was Miles. And Miles used to say, it's like a smorgasbord, Joshua. Take what you want, leave the rest. And he said it over so many years, but like
Yeah.
it's right now. It's poignant right now. Look, if you feel there's this other thing in psychology, it's like the power structure. So there's three ways you can feel power, right? By being a victim, a rescuer, and an aggressor. They're
Okay.
all the same thing as far as how power goes. They all want power. And so the internal and external messaging is, and what you latch onto, the smorgasbord thing, right? What do you want to give power to? That's why I go back to the creator.
I see. Okay.
Where the power is, that's where the source is, and that's where I come from, and that's what I'll always go back to, and I might as well just stay connected to it. And I can't control whether people feel safe. And I don't go around workplace talking about God and the creator because people don't like that. They don't agree with that. But if I demonstrate what has been shared with me and they ask me, I'll tell them.
So, what do leaders often misunderstand when they try to create psychological safety but still maintain performance standards in the workplace?
Well, like I said, I think, I don't know if anybody says it, but I think they're thinking it. Like, people don't feel safe and people are going to have anxiety about standards and deadlines. I think sometimes it's like, it's okay to acknowledge that things are, and validate even, not collude, not make it a reason not to do your work, but that things are hard for people sometimes.
Yeah.
I think in my field too, I think one of the errors that people make is they try to be someone's therapist. And so I have this term I say to people, I said, as a therapist who's not your therapist, I tell them like that. And they get it, right? They get it right away, because sometimes we do need to compartmentalize a little bit of some blockage, but I'm not going to be trying to do therapy with a staff member or a fellow leader or any of that stuff. That's crossing the line.
Interesting. Go a little deeper into that for me.
Yeah. So some of the things, they're just facts, right? There's productivity numbers, the workflows, the deadlines. But then some of the other things are like how people view their struggle, how people deal with the stress. What is it how come some people get stressed out about some things and other people don't? It's the same thing.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very, very true. Okay. Well, as we start to bring this conversation home, what stands out to me about your work is that it sits at the center of something that every high performer eventually has to face. You can't build a healthy organization with unhealthy leadership. You can't create trust with just slogans. You can't sustain excellence without emotional maturity. So, in closing, Joshua, this show is built around the idea that refusing to stay average is the way you should function in any leadership role. But after this conversation, I think the phrase has a deeper meaning. It is not about achievement per se. It's about choosing responsibility, healing, service, maturity, and leadership when it will be easier just to stay comfortable. It sounds like you're always in a place where you're not really comfortable, but you're managing those expectations. And at this stage in your life and career, what does refusing to stay average mean to you?
Well, I mean, I'm really grateful to you for. I feel like this conversation has helped me to identify what has been true ever since the beginning. Is that response to that invitation? There was years ago where I was really at a really very very low point, and I had something really over me. Dare I say, it felt like an exorcism or something. I don't know, talk about a demon. I don't know, man. It was wild. It was wild. And it happened a long time ago. And like, I remember, it sounds kind of, I don't know, it might sound kind of like, delusional or hallucinatory or something, but I had like these visions. They weren't very clear. And they were praying around me and all this stuff. I lost sense of time and all this stuff. And this lady, her name was Mary, and she was like, "What did he say? What did he say? What did he say?" And I didn't know. I had my eyes closed. But as soon as I opened my eyes, I heard that little voice say, "I want you to help people." So I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what that meant. And so I kind of went down the road I was on at that time, and I still wasn't doing very well. And but I remember that it had an impact on me. But about a year later, I had went to treatment myself. And a group of guys, there were like maybe about 20 guys, maybe a little more. We were usually in two separate groups, but when I finished the program, the guys in the other group, usually they graduated separately, but the guys in the other group, they were like picketing, man. Like, no, we gotta come to Joshua's graduation. And I was like, hey, why you guys made such a big thing? But we did it. We came together, and then we did a group, we did groups like kind of how I do them, like you do the process, you do feedback, but it was a graduation group. And like 99% was said about how I impacted. That's when the light went on. And I was like, oh, okay, creator. Oh, now I see what you're talking about. Kinda. But then I just kept learning. So there was a time where like, way back then, I worked for the county. The county paid me $6 an hour to work for small agencies. I'd get on the bus, I'd bring my little counseling book and my Bible, and I would read those things. And I would just go into the agency, and I would learn.
What do you hope people understand about leadership, service, and human dignity after they encounter your work? It sounds like you've left an impression on most of the people you've touched.
Yeah, well, my hope is that they establish a relationship with the creator or a higher power or something, right? To feel, to make that healing sustainable, right? To stay focused. And I do share that with people sometimes. They compliment me and they say all these things, and I share, like I'm sharing with you, where that comes from. It was still an invitation to be helpful. And I think that's what success is.
Most people aren't fortunate enough to truly have a calling. It sounds like you, in a quite literal sense, found your calling.
Yeah.
In a metaphorical sense, but you were called to your work. And I think that's why I really appreciate this conversation. What I think the audience will take away from this is that psychological safety is not soft, because I came into this conversation thinking it was soft. It's not passive, and it's not about avoiding accountability. It sounds to me, and let me know if I'm wrong, it's about building environments where people can tell the truth, do meaningful work, receive correction, but not criticism, recover from those mistakes, and still feel respected as human beings. Is that about right?
Yeah, and it's growth, right? It's growth. Again, it's a parallel process. So like when we work with people, we also have hard conversations with people. We take chances in those sessions. We take chances like, am I hearing you correctly? That, this, that, and the other thing, right? And we also open up such a psychological space. I think that's the thing too, is having that psychological space to where you're honoring the person's suffering. And I don't know if that's a thing that we really per se do in this country so much, right? Honoring someone's suffering. We're like, oh, well, you'll get better. You'll feel better. Da, 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 take this, take that. Well, whatever, do this, buy that, do this, do this thing, the newest thing. But it's like, suffering ain't new, and neither is healing.
Dude, your career is a reminder that real leadership requires technical competence, but it also requires emotional maturity, boatloads of integrity and values that are unwavering, and a willingness to serve in places where work is not always easy. Thank you for joining us today, man. To everyone listening, this has been another episode of Top Bracket, where we host conversations with high performers like our friend Joshua, who refuse to stay average. If this conversation challenged the way you think about leadership, culture, or the responsibility you carry inside your organization, make sure you subscribe, share this episode with someone who leads, and stay connected for the next conversation. I'm your host, mr.FourAM. Until next time, think bigger, build smarter, and refuse to stay average.
Thanks, Lamont.
Thanks for listening to the Top Bracket Podcast, where top performers share their playbook. Subscribe so you never miss the next episode.